This is democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, in a state of lockdown amid unprecedented levels of security. Fences, barriers, and roadblocks have been erected across the city. 7,000 law enforcement agents from more than 100 federal, state, and local agencies are on patrol. Heavily armed Coast Guard boats will patrol the Potomac River. Snipers have taken up positions on rooftops. Bomb-sniffing dogs are on patrol, and so-called Patriot anti-missile batteries are stationed near the Capitol. The entire area around Capitol Hill and the White House has been cordoned off. More than 100 streets are off limits to traffic, and the inauguration designated a national special security event. Our guest, Shahid Buttar. He's a Washington, D.C. based lawyer and member of the Guerrilla Poetry Insurgency Affinity Group, part of the anti-inauguration parties, also a member of the Resistance Media Collective here in D.C., and Mark Goldstone, who is chair of the Demonstration Support Committee of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. And we welcome you both to Democracy Now!
Thanks for having us.
Well, Shahid, we've been talking about some of these protests. Talk more about the planning here in Washington, D.C., where people will be today, what they're doing.
There's going to be a variety of events, and one of the things that we find most encouraging about it is that it's going to be representing a wide swath of progressive perspectives. There's going to be a march planned by an anti-war group here with backing from United in Peace and Justice, and there'll be a series of feeder marches representing distinct views within that. So there'll be a feeder march from a Green Party bloc. There'll be a feeder march from an anti-authoritarian bloc. And we'll see this sort of unity among synergistic perspectives throughout the day in a variety of actions. The Billionaires for Bush will be auctioning off Social Security by, I believe, the FDR Memorial, which we find a nice juxtaposition, if you will. And there'll be really a variety of tactics as well. There'll be people lining the parade route by themselves, turning their backs very solemnly in mourning, essentially, that we have another 4 years of a president who will continue to turn his back on the American people. There'll be people out in the street, much more festive, colorful puppets and drumming, and the more vibrant celebration of the rebirth of the next 4 years of the anti-war movement. And we'll be seeing a variety of tactics, incorporating not just different issues, but also different methodological commitments. So, you know, people being creative on the one hand, people on another hand perhaps being more visually oriented with their signs. There's going to be a mass convergence at 4th and Pennsylvania along the parade route for people who want to be visible to the president. And then there'll be a series of actions that have not been publicized, groups that are taking either assertive action or action that they haven't seen fit necessarily to coordinate with anyone else.
Mm-hmm. What police have done in the past, the lawsuits outnumbering the criminal convictions, Shahid, how has that shaped people's plans for today?
It's certainly something we're concerned about because of all its implications, especially for the state of dissent and really democracy writ large in this country. But in terms of our tactics and what people are resolved to do to express themselves, I don't think it matters much. I mean, it certainly deters people from expressing perhaps the full range of their convictions, and I think that there are many reasons to be concerned. But the fact is, Americans of conscience will not be intimidated, period. And there is a movement afoot to restore democracy in this country, to defend civil rights, to defend the environment, defend the poor of both this country and the world, and it will not be intimidated by so-called security threats. If I may, two things to point out about the militarization of this city over the last few days. The first is that there's been no specific threat. Of all the times that this administration trots out its fake security warnings, this happens to be a time when we've not seen one of them yet. Despite that, we see this lavish display of security measures. And then second, the people of this district who aren't allowed to vote for Congress are being forced to foot the bill for the security measures. Joan talked about the corporate money that's funding the inauguration itself. The security measures to keep Bush from having to hear the dissent, to silence the people of this district more than they already are, that's coming out of our own pockets. And I find that deeply objectionable, as will all of us out in the streets today.
As we wrap with a rap from our guest in studio, Shahid Buttar. Shahid?
If you care, get out of your chair. If you want to lend a hand, take a stand. And if you're tired of control by conservative factions, get up and take action. So you go home, You watch the network news, get inundated by the views of the mainstream, the moderate, the political middle that got skewed to the right by historical riddles. You be fiddling with your computer on the web and you found yourself appalled at the truth you just read. You said to all your friends who lend you the ear how this president should have every person on this planet feeling fear, near, middle, and far, marring the international reputation of what could be a fine, wonderful nation struggling over history to seek enlightened policies, to be a polity that reflects not just liberty, right, but also bona fide democracy, equality. These are the values in which we're all taught to believe. These are the values we should see reflected institutionally right here in D.C. And if you agree with me, join us in the streets.
Shahid Buttar, who is not only a lawyer in Washington, D.C., but going to be out on the streets today with his poetry affinity group as well. And that does it for today's program as we broadcast from the streets and studios of Washington, D.C. on this Inauguration Day 2005.